Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the average disabled individual wants nothing more than not being limited or confined by their own disability. This debate is uniquely about how governments and educational institutions can best involve them, hone their skills, and give them the confidence and technical capacity they need to be able to compete, get a job, and incorporate in normal life. On-side opposition, we're likely to see a problem-solution mismatch that seeks to be a champion of inclusivity and equity, but does the exact opposite when these disabled individuals are boxed out and pushed into the margins of society, when they are canned in these second-rate institutions, even if we have good intention, and they're going to be seen less of a priority from educational institutions and potential employers in the future. Because the common denominator that these people share becomes that disability, and the very thing they're trying to break away and be free from the shackles of becomes something that inhibits their ability to grow. A few things on our side of the house for the model. Firstly, this is a policy motion and a priority motion. On both sides, these mainstream institutions and specialized centers will continue to exist, but what we mean by these mainstream institutions are Ivy Leagues and the top public and private schools all across the particular country. What schools, you might ask? All schools. Primary school, secondary, meaning middle school, high school, junior high, senior high, all the way up until tertiary education, colleges, and universities, either private or state operated. Secondly, what do we mean by prioritize effort? This can be done through hard and soft ways. Things which include but are not limited to priority of direct funding from the endowment or from the direct budget of the school, support and clamor from the public like the Parent Teachers Association, the student body, and other civic organizations to forward this kind of educational reform, a general broad push in terms of the narrative of this being something we might want to do, and I think quite importantly, being able to give certain grants and scholarships or slots to these particular people to have a chance to be able to compete. In a perfect world, we'd want to do both, but scarcity exists and we want to be able to prioritize the mainstream institutions adjusting. Thirdly, what does more inclusive look like? I have a few mechanisms here. Number one, awareness of disabilities for the general student body, the staff, and the teachers to be aware of. Because it's fair to say the average ordinary person probably just categorizes it as disabled stuff I can see and observe, or things which are not visual. But we think there's a huge room to exercise awareness and inclusivity of the different kinds of disabilities. Things related to communication, learning, physical disabilities, developmental disabilities, heck, even psychosocial or behavioral and emotional ones, and even things which can affect your ability to retain information. The second thing that we want to be able to do is building infrastructure. Things like hardware to be able to allow them the necessary equipment they need to be able to literally have a good learning environment, and also necessary softwares for them to be able to keep up. This looks like establishing certain ramps, certain comfort rooms, and certain safe spaces for these particular individuals. Thirdly, quite importantly, specialized training for teachers and staff to be able to understand how to deal with these things, because that's also important for a safe learning environment. Three things on our side of the house. Why is this something necessary for the state and schools to do? Number two, why is it more likely to be effective and a better way for the disabled individuals to be able to learn and incorporate into the student body, which is later a reflection of how the real world works and vice versa? And number three, why this is better than the comparative of separate kinds of institutions. First layer of analysis. The goal of schools, like what I said in my pre-oration, is to be able to prepare them. Meaning, these disabled individuals want a sense of belongingness and camaraderie that can exist when they're able to be exposed with other kinds of individuals, so that they can expand their worldview and not be limited by the people they've known, their family, and other people who share that same attribute. This argument is talking about expanding the worldview, both the disabled individuals and people who are not disabled, so they can have a better reflection and have less judgment, because at some point in time, they're gonna work with each other in the future and be exposed there. This is a way to normalize those particular encounters. Secondly, this is going to be able to foster a better sense of competition, wherein the people who are able-bodied are going to be able to be pressured to also be able to compete, because we don't want these people to be defined by this disability, and just because they're disabled doesn't mean they can't debate or be just as good as you, especially since their whole life they probably feel second rate. Before 6, sure, I'll take the point of information.
You say that it made the awareness by the student to expose, but however, do you have the guarantee that those students will not perceive to bully those disability students?
No, because like if you're kind of mean to them, then we can cancel you and say you're an asshole. And I think the general spirit of DEI, the same way we're able to treat trans and queer individuals, creating safe spaces also for religious and cultural minorities, is along the similar grain. On your comparative, they're more likely to be alienated and ostracized at the point in which they encounter them later on in life and have no idea how to deal with it. It's something seen as taboo. The conclusion to my second point before the point of information was exercising a sense of agency and self-actualization for these particular people. Because these mainstream and existing legacy institutions have a reputation, the other does not, and we don't want that to necessarily be considered second rate, and we want to be able to shatter and give light on certain taboo and stigma that can come from malevolence, can come from ignorance, and ultimately not being exposed to these individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, on side proposition, we want to champion diversity in order to make these schools less homogeneous and incorporate them to other people who exist. We are very proud to stand and open on side prop. Thanks.